So in this video, we are going to do just a quick lesson on color theory and how you can use the primary colors and black and white to mix your own skin tones and neutralizer colors for corrective makeup. So every single color that we have, every skin tone that we have, that can be made, give or take, but most things they can be made from your primary colors and from black and white. So I feel like as a makeup artist, like one of the easiest ways to understand this concept is to sit down with cream colors in your primary colors and with white and black, and to sit and mix up your skin tone, and then also practice mixing up like a color corrector or two. So a lot of people, when they get this assignment, they don't really know where to start. So the way I was taught to do this was to think that you kind of have to figure out like where does everyone's skin start. So the reason that we all have color in our skin is because of melanin. Some people have more melanin than others, which is what results in us having such a variety of skin tones as human beings. And so we kind of have to figure out, if we all have melanin, what color is melanin, what color does that mean for us in terms of mixing. So orange is going to be the color of melanin. So every single person, when they're mixing up their skin tone, no matter how pale or how deep your skin is, you should start by mixing up orange. So how do we make orange? So orange is one of our secondary colors, so that means that we have to use two of our primaries in order to create that. So if you aren't totally sure what I'm talking about and you're new to color theory, having some kind of color wheel is great. So I know that using this, I'm going to be able to figure out when we get to the color correction part what my colors are going to be. They're going to neutralize each other. You can kind of spin things around and see what happens when you add like white and black to things. It's a really good idea to have this if you don't have an understanding of color theory. So if you are making orange, you're going to need yellow and red to do this. So it can be a little bit tricky sometimes in makeup to find colors that are the exact primary shades, but at least for this exercise, if you can get them as close to like a primary yellow or a primary red and primary blue as possible, that's going to be great. It may not be totally perfect for your skin tone, but this is just a really good exercise for you to kind of understand where our skin tones come from. And then that way too, if you are working on someone and you don't have their correct shade of foundation or concealer or whatever it is that you need, you'll be able to understand as a makeup artist what you need to add to it in order to make it correct. So your very first step is going to be mixing up orange. So when you're doing this, I would do like a 50-50 ratio. The reason that I have it on this gray palette paper, so gray is like our ultimate neutral color. If you think of like the color wheel, instead of having it as like a little flat thing like this, there's actually a cone, like a cone shape. I was like, is that the right word? Yes, so there's like a cone shape one. That's really awesome. So at the top of it, you have white, and then in the middle is going to be gray, and then the end of it is going to be black. So gray is sort of our like ultimate neutral, and like kind of our like perfect middle ground in a sense. And if you think of like what our skin tones are, especially in terms of this sort of exercise, they are not like the extremes of these colors. They are like toned down versions of them essentially. And what that means is like they are like, nobody is going to be like exactly orange in their skin. They're going to be neutralized a little bit, and then a little bit lighter, a little bit deeper. So basically our skin tones are sort of like they are like the neutrals of the color wheel essentially. And so a neutral usually has some sort of like grayish to it. So that's kind of what you're trying to achieve here. If that gets a little bit confusing, another really great color wheel to have is this one by Terry Tomlinson. I love this, especially if you have a harder time just looking at like the fine art color wheel. This one actually has that, but then it shows you skin tones in that range. I think this is incredibly helpful, especially if you are teaching other people how to do color theory, because you can look at this and you kind of get more of an understanding of like what adding gray to things would look like. And this can be a really great tool for color matching people and just having an idea of where to start. So your very first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take a little bit of your red and your yellow, and you're going to make orange. What I recommend doing is I always put everything off to the side, and then I mix in another area. That's another reason that I like to have a larger surface to mix on. Not only do I have it gray, so that way I have it on like the ultimate neutral background. If it's too white, it might throw off the color. If it's too dark, it might throw off the color. If it's a random color, that could throw off the color. So gray, if you want to do some serious color mixing, it's a really good kind of neutral world to have, because it won't distract you from the color that you're mixing. But I always like will take a little bit of each one and then mix it off to the side, so that way if I'm like, oh, I put way too much red in this, I didn't ruin like my entire yellow or something. I always keep these colors off to the side, and then mix up different versions of it, just so that way if I ever need to go back to something else I mixed, it's always there if I need it. So I'm going to take a little bit of the yellow, and so I'm not going to mix up a ton of this, but just enough to do like a little swatch. And then we can take some of the red, probably too much. It can be a little hard to kind of know how much of it to mix up, but then basically when you're mixing it, you're just kind of like pushing it back and forth like that, and that's going to help you to create orange. So really it should be like a 50-50 balance between the two colors. This one is probably, no, it's getting pretty orange. It can be a little bit tricky to tell, especially two different lighting situations are going to call for different things. And one thing I will say when you are mixing up your own colors is the way that colors are mixed when they are like processed into makeup is going to be different than when you're just mixing it like this. When we're mixing it like this, sometimes you'll think that you have the color right, and then you'll swatch it into the skin, and the little pigments in it kind of like burst onto your skin essentially, and that can really like change the way the color is. So just know when you're buying like a pre-made foundation, if it has like, when it has like these pure colors in it, the way that those are made, it's not going to have those like little bursts of pigment, whereas this, like, it might seem like it's totally mixed perfectly well, but then sometimes when you get it on the skin, it's not. And two, I recommend, that's why I have a Q-tip too, because in your brushes, a lot of the time, the color will get like stuck in it, and you'll think that you're only working with like your orange now, but there's like tons of yellow in it, or what have you. So it's a good idea to use little things like this if you do have to like add in a little bit more. And I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow just because I think it's getting a little bit too red. And basically you just want to keep mixing it until it seems like it's a pretty even color, and then so you can kind of see where we're at. So we have a pretty solid orange to start with, and so now you're like, okay, I mixed orange, how on earth do you make a skin tone from there? So from that you kind of have to neutralize it, because if I take this orange and I put this on my skin, that's very orange, right? Like, that is not my skin tone. That is probably not anyone's skin tone. So the reason that it's not is because it's like too vivid to be a skin tone, so we need to neutralize it. And so that's when you have to think back to your color wheel too. So what is going to neutralize orange? Blue. So blue is one of those things that I think seems a little bit weird to put into skin tones sometimes, but it's one of those things that you just want like the smallest bit of it. If you put a ton of blue into it, that could really gray this out. So I recommend, again, probably just taking like a little Q-tip and just taking a little bit of it, and then again, like I did with this, I'm not going to cover this whole thing with blue. I'm just going to do it in like a small section, so that way if it's not working how I want it to, it doesn't destroy all of my orange. So this is going to create a gray shade essentially, because this blue is going to completely start like neutralizing that orange. And so you can see that from the orange, now we created sort of this like beigey taupey tone. And so if I take that and I swatch a little of that on my skin, it's better, but that's still not my skin tone. So that means that from this neutral point, so we went from just red and yellow to orange, and now we're kind of at this like grayish sort of color. So this is where you kind of lighten and darken it until it gets to your kind of like perfect skin tone. So for me, I know it's definitely got to go a lot lighter, so I'm going to add in a little bit of white and see what it looks like from there. And then at this point, it can be adding in like a little white, a little black. Sometimes you might have to put a little bit more like yellow into it. Sometimes I'll put a little bit more orange into it. This is sort of like where you have to figure out exactly what like your undertones or the person's undertones are, and you have to put them in there. So we're going to put a little bit of white. So be really careful, especially when you're putting in black when you're at this point, just because white and black are both the extremes, right? So white is extremely light, black is going to be extremely dark. If you put just a little bit of it into it, it's really going to change the color a lot. So you want to make sure that you're not overdoing it, just so that way you don't destroy the color. And so again, I'm going to kind of work in a smaller section, so that way I still have some of my other color left if I need it. And this is definitely not like the fastest process in the world. It will take a second, and like obviously it's a lot easier to just have a foundation mixed. But I think that this is a really great exercise to kind of like get you thinking about how color is created in our makeup. So you can see that. So that's going to be a little bit too light, right? I am pale, but I'm not quite that pale. So now I'm going to take probably a little bit more of my orange, and this is why I do like to have this mixed up, and I'm going to put that back into here. So for somebody like me, I probably could have just put like a little bit of yellow into the white and gotten really close to my skin tone, but starting this way I feel like really gives you more of like an appreciation and an understanding for color, and it'll make you work a little bit harder, I think, to get these results. So again, we're going to put a little bit more orange into it, and then it's getting into more of like a peachy tone, and so now I've got to pull probably a little bit more yellow, I think, for me. And this can be one of those things, like this can get really frustrating if you're not used to like mixing colors or you haven't taken a lot of art classes, but I think it's kind of fun, and this is a good way to teach you to understand how to like pull colors apart, just because there might be times when you really do have to adjust something for someone, and you want to make sure that you are able to work on any person that you might have to work on for something. So really having a good understanding of how color works and how we can like manipulate it can really help you be able to work on people. And then also it'll be good for you because you won't have to carry around 1,000 colors of foundation or concealer if you understand, if you just have like a little color wheel and you understand how to add in little bits of color to get what you need to. So now with adding in like the yellow, a little bit more orange and more white, I'm getting a lot closer to what my skin tone is going to be. So this is just going to take probably a little bit more white, and then I think that'll be pretty close. For some people, if you're really olivey, you might have to mix up sort of like a goldeny green and kind of add it in there. So this is one of those things that if you don't know what your undertone is yet, doing this kind of an exercise can probably really help you figure it out, because you can keep swatching it, and eventually you're going to get to something that's going to blend into your skin and look accurate and look correct, and that's going to help you figure out like, oh, well, what colors did I add into it? That'll help you determine kind of like what your undertone is. And I always add in a little bit at a time, just so that way I would rather have to spend a little bit more time on it and not destroy my entire color than like add in a little bit too much, especially when you're deepening it, or when you're adding in that blue. Just the smallest amount of those colors will make a really big difference. Okay, so this is definitely starting to get pretty close to the foundation color that I use. So I'm going to go ahead and take another brush and swatch this on. So when you're swatching for colors, it's a good idea to swatch it like along your jawline. I usually like to match things. Like I like the color of my face usually is what I make my neck. My neck is like a little bit paler, so I just like to make these match. But if you prefer the color of like your chest or your neck, you want to make sure that your face is matching that. So match to whatever is best for you, but for most people, that is going to be like the jawline into the neck. And so we can put this on, and you can see, especially compared to the orange that we started with, that is pretty much my skin tone and the shade of foundation that I use. And so again, when you're mixing this way, you can kind of see it in this brush. There might be like little bits of like the orange left over. That's just because it's like the pigment bursting, because you don't have all the like right equipment to like properly like totally mix something. But that's why it's really important, if you are ever doing this for someone, to really like push it in and push it around, so that way you don't get any like unmixed color on yourself. So I can put it like, we'll put it some pretty red right here, and you can see on me that blends in really nicely. And so if you are ever mixing something up like this, make sure obviously that wouldn't be enough to do my entire face. You would want to mix up enough to do your entire face, but that's just like a basic quick little exercise you can do to help you understand color. And then if you wanted to try to mix up a color corrector, so let's do, since we have orange right here, I have some leftover orange, so let's try to mix up an orange that would be appropriate for me. So a lot of people will use orange to cover up under eye circles, but if I use something that vivid on how pale I am, that would just turn me orange essentially. So I always like to use color correctors that are appropriate for somebody's skin tone. So that's another time that like this wheel from Terry Tomlinson is really great, just because I can go into orange and I can find what's probably going to be better for me, or I'm like, oh, maybe I need more of like a red orange or orange yellow. But you can see, like, if you can't look at orange and understand how to find a skin tone in it, something like this is really going to help you do that. So I'm lighter, so I'm going to need something a little bit lighter and more skin tone in order for it to be a good orange for my skin. So what I can do, since I already have my skin tone mixed up, and this is something I love to do, because you're going to buy color correctors that are pure orange like that. You're going to buy color correctors that are like pure green. They sell them just like this. They sell minty green, slightly lighter orange, red orange, everything. But if it's still not right, I will usually just take a little bit of that and mix it into somebody's skin tone. And that's going to help make kind of like a custom color corrector for someone. So that's why I like to start with this exercise. I start with mixing a skin tone first, and then I go in and I do the color corrector after that, just so that way you kind of already have the base to mix from. And so basically all I did is I just made like a peachier version, and that's exactly like the color corrector that I use for my under eyes. So if I kind of like duck in here for a second, I can take this, and again, it's not perfectly blended because I didn't spend too long doing it, but just that little bit of orange. And again, it's my own face, so touching my hands is not too awful. That little bit of orange in there is going to help to neutralize compared to this eye. And so if I took just this regular orange, I would not be able to just like put that on and not put foundation over it. I would have to put more stuff over it, and then sometimes your foundation will mix with it, and that will turn you really orangey. So having something that's already closer to your skin tone is going to get you a little bit closer to the end result that you want than using the extremes sometimes. So the lighter the skin tone, the more you're going to need to kind of customize a lot of these color correctors, because the vivid color could be too much. Deeper skin tones, you can put red and like red, orange, and orange colors on there, and usually once you cover it with skin tone, you're good to go. But usually for like paler or even like some medium skin tones, you have to custom mix it. And I just think that you just end up, it's just easier on you, because if I have to sit here and like cover orange on myself, then I'm going to need something that might be like slightly bluer than what my skin tone is and cooler. Whereas this, I just started with my skin tone, I added in a little color corrector that I needed, and the two kind of work together and they blend in a lot better than that orange did. So hopefully, if you didn't quite understand color theory before, or how you could mix up your own skin tones and neutralizers, this hopefully will help you make a little bit more sense. Again, if you're doing this, if you have like a flash palette or any kind of like, I have like a little Krylon like color wheel, something like this is great to have. I think it's easiest with creams to do this. Having some kind of a color wheel, getting this skin tone one from Terry Tomlinson is really, really helpful. And otherwise, it really is just like practice and kind of training your eye to kind of look for undertone and look for color. But the more you do it, the easier it's going to get, and the easier you're going to be able to learn how to like match skin tones on people and match foundations. And then that way you'll know if you're ever in a pinch, oh, I just have to like make this a little orangier, add a little bit more peach, or make it a little bit cooler or more olive, and this person will be good to go.